Good morning, everyone. Most of you have been on these calls before. For those of you who have not been, welcome for the first time. We're happy to have you here. I'm Jim Kaleka. I am sales director with Learning Evolution, which is the tech side of the Fox selling system. I've been working with Tom Fox now for over 10 years, came from the beer side of things at the distributor side, but have been involved in everything you can imagine with regards to, selling, managing, etc. But this is really my most exciting and favorite part of the business, and that's developing people. So happy to have the opportunity to be working with Tom and his middle child, Sean. It's outstanding that we get to work together. I never thought that would happen, but and you're going to find out that the apple does not fall far from the tree. If you like Tom, you love Sean. And with that, I'm not going to say anything about what place he finished in the last Fox Open. I'm not going to mention it, Tom, because it seemed like you got a little testy yesterday when I brought it up. And he is taller than I am, I'm afraid of him. Doesn't seem to be, violent, but who knows? So, hey, Sean, I was trying to, I don't know if he can even hear, he's connecting to audio. Sean, I was giving you just a stellar welcome and introduction, and you missed most of it. Didn't say anything about you losing to your dad in the golf outing. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to you, Sean, to introduce yourself.
I think we lost him. So on behalf of Sean, this is Tom Fox, and Sean is a nice young man, a good boy that his mother's really proud of. So that's about as good of a bio as you're ever going to get. So anyway, we are excited to be here, as Jim mentioned. Jonathan, you and I have met. I think everybody else is very familiar with our firm. We're really all about helping our clients get better at selling, and especially when we think about today in terms of key account. Getting better at selling is high stakes when you're talking about your most important accounts, which is the chain account. So we're excited to be with you today to talk about creating solutions and how. This is probably tied in closest to what all of you do every day. When you think about what am I trying to sell? Well, you're trying to sell in new items. So we have to create assortment solutions. We're trying to sell in programs or promotions. We're trying to sell in. So our promotional solutions ties into that. Now, the difference between a suggestion and a solution is significant in that a solution basically has the whole executional element included. Not only that, but also you'll never have a better handle on the quantification of your suggestion or your solution by understanding what, like, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you bring an item in, typically something's got to come out. So what are we going to lose on that item coming out versus what's going to be brought in? So that fact-based element really comes alive at that point. So you can see we've still got presentation development and delivery coming up in the next couple of months. So all good stuff there. All right. Our objective, as always, is about increasing the level of influence. So I do think you're going to have more influence if we can move people from suggestions to solutions. That's kind of key, and we'll get into all that. Jim, you're probably thinking, what quote does Fox have today?
I'm waiting with bated breath, Tom.
Okay. Hey, it's Tony Robbins. Remember what? Anyone know what movie that's from? Hey, it's Tony Robbins. Tommy Boy.
Tommy Boy.
Tommy Boy, exactly.
I was going to say Tommy.
So what does this mean to you, Jim, this quote?
Well, Thomas, give me 1 second here. What it means to me, hang on a second. I got the screen blocked.
I just picked the quote because I like Tony Robbins.
You do. My daughter actually went to one of his summer.
Awaken the giant within.
All right. Where's the quote?
Waiting for your feedback at any time, Jim.
Yeah, I know. And I lost the screen. This is so funny. I'm going to digress for just one
second. At any point, we would love any feedback on the quote.
Okay, so listen, I'm admitting somebody here first. All right.
I got it.
Have any of you folks just nod or unmute and say, seen this TV show that Helen Mirren hosts where it's animals talking in the wild? Has anybody seen that? No, I'm the only person on here. Okay, well,
Apparently so.
it's pretty funny. And at one point, they have multiple animals on the screen, but they're talking all like they're in a Zoom call. And they lost the connection. One of the animals is telling the other person to unmute. Hey, where did that go? Anyways, it's probably funnier if you saw it. So, hey, Tom, I am not seeing your presentation. I've seen.
Can anyone see my screen?
Let me just
Okay.
see.
All right, Jim. I guess I'm gonna go solo.
Yeah, go
Can't
solo.
count on you or Sean. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I got this.
Fantastic.
I got this.
All
All
right.
right. So what the
Sorry,
quote
I'm
means
driving
to
home.
me?
I'm driving home for a funeral. Sorry.
Oh yeah, trying to make me feel bad. Not gonna happen.
It's okay.
Not
It's,
gonna
it's okay.
Do the best you can, Jim and Sean. I would say the expectations I have are pretty low, so you probably can't. You probably can't get a bad spot here. So you're fine. It doesn't take much to meet my expectations. Low bar. The bar is low.
Yeah, sorry.
But anyway, so problems are obviously, every account's going to have a problem. They're going to have KPIs that they want to get accomplished, and likely they aren't either hitting those KPIs, or maybe there's a chance to even break even further ahead of their KPIs. Usually a lot in it for the buyer, so problems are what we would call opportunities. We can solve those. So a problem might be $1 million problem. Our solution might be a $500,000 solution. So we can solve half of that. That's kind of key. All right. In the chat bar, let's see how good of a memory all of you have. We always say that there are 3 major bullet points, 3 major pillars, if you will, about being great at key accounts. Does anyone have any idea? And I'll give you a hint. One of the 3 is the title of this program. That should make it easy for you. So in the chat bar, go ahead.
By the way, Tom, I think that's an outstanding quote. I mean, it really means a lot to me too, personally.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
I can identify with my problems.
Okay. So Tracy and Rodney, you of course, you had me at empathy, but it is not necessarily one of the pillars. Be objective. Kevin knocked it out. If you can see Kevin's, that is the 3 pillars. So Kevin, whenever you look at a presentation from the team, you ought to be able to tell right away which ones are objective and fact-based and solution-oriented, right? That should be,
yeah.
So nice job.
Not
Surprised that the main guy knocked it out of the park. So we're obviously here to talk about solutions, but really quick, just the first pillar, if the presentation is clear that it is helping the customer. So you think about a solution, Jim, solution ties right back to being objective. Because if you have a solution that can solve a certain percentage, a certain subset of a bigger opportunity, it will be abundantly clear that you're trying to help.
Absolutely.
And if you don't, so if you have a suggestion, hey, I want you to bring in blue light seltzer, that's fine. Maybe it's a good idea, but it's not a solution. So I even think, Jim, the whole fact-based element is truly fact-based when we not only identify an opportunity, but even, I would say more so, are able to tie that back together. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's remarkable at how long this industry has succeeded without that being the primary focus of suppliers and distributors. I mean, and no offense to people who are on the call that are suppliers. What we're just saying is that many people, the marching orders that they've been given have not necessarily included training and background that would allow them to speak to solutions, to be fact-based oriented. And Tom, you've said this, you probably will say it today, about it's easy to understand, read and understand it, but it's extremely difficult to articulate it. And I think that therein lies the issue. We see oftentimes many of the same faces attend these. And because I think that repetition of hearing it more and more and more helps it sink in. And as I mentioned to you the other day, there's never been one of these where I haven't walked away learning something new that I didn't know before. I didn't know Jonathan had joined the key account team. So
Yeah,
that's
there you go. You learned something.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So when you put it all kind of in perspective in terms of what we really want our presentations to look like, for it to be objective, we've got to reconfirm their KPIs. So that's an important component. Talked about that a couple months ago. Last month, we talked about identification of opportunities. And really the opportunities and the solutions are completely tied to the hip. Identify an opportunity for the category or for a segment or for a package. It's a big opportunity that then our assortment or our promotional solutions can then capture a subset of that. So an example would be, this idea of, hey, right now we identified an opportunity of $1 million for craft or for seltzer, doesn't matter what segment. Then you look at what our assortment solution brings. And a lot of times the assortment solution can include our brands, but can also include some of our competitors that maybe have high velocity, not great distribution. That really, when you provide an objective solution compared to just a portfolio solutions are fine, but they're never going to be as big as a solution that would include a key competitor. And it's not like we're trying to sell it in for the competitor. We're just trying to showcase what maximum revenue might look like should they take our solution and execute it. So that's the whole idea. We want to see an opportunity identified. We want to see a solution, and both of them are quantified, and then we compare the subset. That should be the theme of the presentation. That should be the story. And if it's not going to look like we're helping as much as it is looking like we're selling. Both could be successful, but our influence will be maximized by making it look like we're helping, we're solving a problem, right? So let's talk about our research. And I think many of you know that we do conduct 50 to 100 interviews a year with regional and national buyers. So I think, Sean, do I got to launch this poll, Sean? I think I got to launch it. All right, so let me launch the poll. How do retailers think we as an industry, how do we do as an industry? Select one answer. Because we find out, we ask retailers what's important, and then how do suppliers, beer, wine, spirit suppliers, actually perform against, in this case, creating solutions. All right, this is good. A couple more people. Nice. All right, got 8. I think, did we lose Sean again?
Probably.
That little tyke.
Yeah, I think if there's ever been a time for a timeout, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legacy of disappointment. That's all I can say.
So do we need to stop sharing? I can do that.
No, let's share the results. Okay. So again, you're going to see the results in a second. I would say we're probably between we could improve and not very good at all. I love the fact that someone was like, did someone say a vendor actually provided? That's pretty funny. No one said we do a great job. So let me share with you the research. And hey, Jim, hold on a second. I'm going to have you present this. I'm going to have you present that. I'm closing on my house today, and there's a phone call coming in. Yeah, just give me 1 second. Hello, Tom Fox.
Hi, everyone. Usually it's this time where I would do shadow puppets and that type of thing. Sometimes maybe even get on the drums and play a song if it was requested. I'm taking requests now.
So I just sent it again. I'm actually on the Zoom. I got to jump off, but just wait a little bit and send it again. I'll get it. You're the man. Okay. Thanks, Eric. See you. All right, Jim, did you explain the slide with poise and confidence?
Actually, I was doing shadow puppets and I was offering to play the drums, and I didn't even get to that. So
So what you're looking at here is all of the competencies and questions that we ask. And solutions were the number 2 in terms of importance of what these large retailers want from us. They want us to be good at not only creating the solutions but executing them. Number 2 in terms of importance, a 3.62 importance rating out of a 4 is the highest score. So it's pretty high up there. The 7 indicates that when you look at the ranking of how retailers believe that we perform against these competencies, it's the 7th best thing that we do, far below expectations. So what does all that mean? It means that a lot of your competition isn't really good at this. This can be an opportunity to really separate. Make sense? Okay. Yeah, and you look at a lot of this, some of the highest competencies in terms of importance are there's like we're the best things that we do are towards the bottom. There's a little bit of a misalignment relative to what retailers find important and what they think we're really good at. So something to be aware of. I don't know if that resonates, Kevin, with you and all that. So anyway, I do want to take a quick second and just kind of paint the picture for what and how solutions are kind of important and how they kind of fit in. So I do want to just take a second and say, hey, when you think about the first level of fact-based, analysis, we want to identify the opportunity. So if you remember, when you look at here, so what we're looking at here is a Giant Eagle, little, a Giant Eagle's beer category, breaking it down by segment, looking at the performance and development analysis. And if you look at, again, we could look at seltzer, we could look at FMB, let's look at FMB. I mean, FMB is a 104 index. So it's well developed, but not hugely developed. And it's coming in at 31% growth, but 50 for the market. So there would be opportunities that we could identify. So before we present our solutions, it's important to paint the picture around, okay, so how does what I'm going to be presenting fit in? So if we had an FMB solution, and if you look at the numbers here, let me just grab my little annotate here, my little spotlight. So give me 1 second here. If you look at FMBs, up 31 in Giant Eagle, but up 50 in the market. So there's an opportunity, right? And then if you look, we're a 10.3 share. The market's a 9.9, so we're a little well developed, not a huge chunk of development of positive or surplus development. So if you look here, Jim, and said, hey, right now we're 0.4 of a share point. Let's just say that we said, hey, we're 614,000 surplus. If we were to add a half a share point, try to move the FMBs to say 10.8 share, that would mean half of this value of a share point. We want to always quantify that dollar gap. So if we were to add a half a share to FMBs, you'd be looking at about $725,000. So that would be the opportunity. And then we could then come in with our assortment or promotional solutions in ways that could, kind of provide a subset of that. If we don't have syndicated data, we still have an opportunity with VIP and iDig to identify an opportunity with our entire portfolio. So again, before we would present our solutions, we look here and go, okay, so within, again, this is just a fictitious example using Boulevard Brewery, but this is for total portfolio. So if we look at the total portfolio and say, well, the average store buys 13,200 of Boulevard, but chain B buys on average store almost 17,000. There's a difference of roughly $3,700. We could multiply that by the 50 stores, or this 184,000 is the opportunity. So whether we're talking about, 725,000 with the syndicated data, or in the internal data example, we're talking 184,000, you're talking about a sizable opportunity. And again, I can't, and we're going to move on because we got to talk about solutions, but I can't reiterate, your solutions, and even if you quantify the impact of your solutions, will not be as compelling if you don't tie that impact back to a bigger opportunity, like in this example, 184,000, or in this example, a half a share point or $725,000. So before I go into solutions, I want to just throw it out. Any questions? Does that make sense? Critical to establish an opportunity before we present the solution. Okay, probably pretty obvious. Good stuff. So now when we get into solutions, we're talking primarily assortment and promotion. Let's talk about assortment first. So the concept for assortment solutions, again, notice there's 2 bullet points here. Many people say, well, hey, listen, these items sell really fast. You should carry them. That's somewhat compelling. But if you compare items that are fast selling compared to items that are slow and items that don't have great distribution versus ones that have great distribution, you know, that's the puzzle you're trying to put together. So if anyone ever asks you, hey, what criteria do you use when you give me these assortment solutions? What's your criteria? I would want people to say with poise and confidence, hey, we're looking for items that sell very quickly, that don't have great distribution. We're going to suggest that those come in and gain, you know, incremental ACV or CWD in lieu of items that are not selling very quickly, but are occupying a lot of space. We're going to suggest we reduce the ACV. So very simple concept, but yet, you know, again, we talk about this notion, Jim, you said it, Albert Einstein, it's easier to calculate analysis than it is to articulate analysis. I really believe that. Or like my boy, Albert Einstein says, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't know it well enough yourself. So I have seen a lot of people in role plays walk through their assortment solutions, and very few of them set it up with this way. I mean, could a 6-year-old understand? Could a 6-year-old understand? Wait a minute, you're telling me you're going to bring items that sell fast and take out items that sell slow. I think a 6-year-old could get that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple measures within syndicated data that can help us do this. So obviously the dollars per point is the velocity measure. That, again, equalizes distribution down to the lowest common denominator, or 1 point of distribution. That basically says if these items were side by side, which one would sell faster? So many items that have great distribution are going to generate decently high levels of total volume, likely having greater levels of total volume than some of the items that we might have that are not in great distribution. But when we can equalize distribution through the sales per point measure, it makes that comparison not only fairer, but very likely way more compelling for what you're trying to do. So the other measure we look at, in addition to velocity, again, that's just 2 measures, velocity, and then the other one is distribution, which, you know, either is called CWD or ACV. Kevin, I know this is almost an insulting poll. I almost feel bad for launching it. Let me see if Shawnee's got this one in there. Well, okay, so I don't even, hold on. Can you all see that? Stop sharing. Oh, okay, there it was. There it was. Okay. There you go. All right. Again, Kevin, I apologize in advance. I know your team's going to get 100% on this, and they're going to be like going, what the heck? Why would Fox even ask this? It's like the dumbest poll ever.
I was waiting for Goldman to ask for a C in there.
60% ACV means we have distribution in 60% of the stores. True or false? Come on, vote. Get that. I only got 3, Kevin. There's only 3. I'm assuming you're one of them. Now we got 5.
I'm seeing 5, yeah.
We got 5. The question, Jim, is this a trick question or is this not a trick question? We got 6.
How many questions are there? I thought the question is it true or false?
But there's only, I mean, but the statement, is the statement a trick statement or not a trick statement?
Well, I mean, I guess
7.
Mhm.
We got to get at least one more. Got to get one more. All right. You know what? It took a while, Kevin, to get there, but we have 100% accuracy. Way to go. It is absolutely false. We're not tracking percent of stores. We're tracking the percent of volume. Dollar volume, very likely the dollar volume. So that whole aspect of tracking distribution, just, and again, I won't spend a lot of time because everyone really got this, but it is weighted. So none of you selected the idea of, hey, we're in 2 stores. What does that mean from a percentage of stores? It's 67%. But for ACV, it's different. It's weighted. The first example didn't weight the stores. It just said percent of stores. This one weights. First store, $1 million of total volume. Second store, 2 million. Third store, 3 million. We're in 3 of 6 million. So obviously we're in 50%. So I recognize that you all got 100%. You all know this. That's good. And I would have expected you absolutely to know that. So all good. But once you have a good handle on the ACV and the velocity, we can now estimate what it would look like if we added ACV points to our distribution. And we could quantify it because all we do is take however many points of ACV we're adding, multiply that by the sales rate or the sales per point rate, is going to get you a potential revenue that you could bring in if distribution was increased. So here is an example. So I want everyone to see, now you all are hot stuff. I get it. You all got 100% on that poll. So congratulations. Let's see how you do on this one. Not that difficult, and do me a favor. When you send this in the chat box, send it to me personally. Do not send it to everyone. I want everyone to send, but what you're going to do is calculate if we subtracted 40 points of ACV from Blue Moon and added those 40 points to Rheingeist, what is in it for the cat? What potential revenue would exist? And so I'm giving you this a little easier. Don't worry about 40.7 or whatever. Just take 40 points. Add 40 to Rheingeist, subtract 40. Does anyone understand? Can anyone calculate what that revenue difference would look like? And then when you get that number, send it to me privately in the chat box. ACV is the same as CWD. Conceptually, they're the exact same thing. ACV tracks all commodity volume, so it's for all the categories. CWD would just be for the beer category or wine or spirits or whatever category. So send me a direct message. All right, I got an answer from Matthew. What's that? So does everyone know how to get it? Here's how you would get it. You simply take the distribution gap, which I've already told you is 40, and you multiply that by the velocity gap. Distribution gap times the velocity gap. So Tracy, if you were, let me just do that math in my head. That seems right. I think Tracy got it. So I would take, I think that's pretty good. I think that's close enough. Matthew, way to correct yourself, Matthew. Your first answer was not correct. Second answer, correct. So, of course, Tracy's going to do a little war whooping here. Love it.
Mic dropping.
Mic drop. Rodney, top notch, top notch. That number works for me, Rodney. Is anyone struggling as to how to get this? Does anyone need any help? I notice a few folks have not responded yet, and I'm assuming that means that maybe they are not 100% on how to get this.
Tom, I think Tracy's looking for a gold star, actually. I mean,
He gets it.
pretty.
Give her the gold
you're
star.
Yeah, you're pretty liberal at passing those out in the past, and here she was the first one with the correct answer and nothing. She's got to ask for it. What's up with that?
All right, so here's the deal. I am not going to wait any longer. So this is how I did it. I basically said, all right, so you're looking at a gap of 40 points. We talked about that. 40 points times 1370, which is the difference that I got. You know, I may have rounded up a little bit, but 33,290 subtract 1921. I just got 1370 just to make it a whole. It's probably a little bit different than that. Times the 40 points got me 54,800, which anyone who was around that 55,000, that would be accurate. Does anyone have any questions as to how, you know, some of you didn't respond in the chat box, which is fine. All right, Matt, you can be a wise guy like that, Matt. That's fine. I get it. I get it. But you're right.
I was actually not responding to you, but responding to my own initial one.
I see.
That was off. So I said, actually, it should be this. And then I saw yours and it was like $600 difference.
Well, I might have screwed up the, you know, the third, it looks like it might be 1369 actually, I think, but whatever. Close enough. Close enough. We're not going to worry about pennies when we're making 55 grand. So, you know, in that case there, if you think about, okay, so, hey, let's look at this overall solution here. So we talked earlier, hey, the customer wants to gain a half a share point. They want to take their FMB business, you know, from 10.3 to 10.8, adding a half a share to FMBs would give them a half a share point. A full share point is 1.45 million. Half of that's about 725. Then if we looked at our solution and we said, okay, hey, so we want you to bring in, you know, in greater ACV, 3 Floyds and land grant. We're going to reduce the distribution for Boston Lager and Fat Tire. That's going to generate a potential 203,000 or 28%. 28% of that 725,000. So that's how you would kind of tie them together. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes, Tom.
Kevin, are you seeing, I mean, is your team for the most part like knocking this out of the park, or is there an opportunity for the team to, you know, tighten up a bit on that? What's your read on that?
Feel like they're knocking it out of the park. I think the one piece that we always come back to is the true incremental opportunity, and I think that's where we maybe just look into it a little bit too deeply.
Could be.
Try to figure it out. So I don't know, but I do see what Jim's got going on right now too, and I kind of like it. He definitely got a lot more hands than last time I saw him.
That's funny.
I look perplexed though. I must say
It was an action. That was an action photo.
Yeah,
Right.
very handsome, but maybe puzzled.
Mm-hmm. That's my normal look. So that's, you know.
Right.
But no, that's the part. I know I shifted there, but that this I like because it's simple and it still gets to the point on where it is, because sometimes we try to figure out like where cannibalization would come, and I think it just sometimes gets a little too much into the weeds when we do that, when we're really just trying to like be simple and show an opportunity. So that's what I really like about this.
Okay, want to get your opinion, Kevin, on if we did this using internal data. So we talked about the opportunity earlier about this example with Hy-Vee for Boulevard Brewery. It's $184,000 opportunity. Now, if Hy-Vee didn't carry one of our, one of our brands or, kind of one of our portfolios, in this case here, Boulevard has a Tank 7 series. Hy-Vee doesn't carry it, but chain A and chain B did. So if you look at chain B, if we were to add in that 3,600 of demand that they're getting for Tank 7 and multiply that 3,600 by the 50 stores, you'd be looking at 184,000, or in this example, 97% of the opportunity gap would be solved. 97%. So basically what you could say then is, hey, if you're trying to increase your sales, and you said you were, our solution, you have a demand gap of 184,000 compared to what chain B is getting from our portfolio. So if you want to increase sales and you bring in Tank 7, that's going to bring you to nearly to par with chain B, increasing your sales, capturing a lot of demand that's out there that you can take from your competition, helping your overall business. Now, Kevin, you talked about the syndicated data that they knock it out of the park. How about on the internal data side? Is this something that the team's doing a lot of, or is this an opportunity?
It's probably pretty selective on who you're talking to because of the areas on where we cover. So I do think it's a big opportunity, because I think this is a good route to look at, because it's hard to compare where it is. And we do have retailers like Goldie's got like Sheets, and they don't share their data except for category captains. And we may think we're knocking it out of the park with a brand, and then we come to find out it doesn't hit a threshold for them. So I think this is a good way to keep that in mind, because it's tough sometimes. He may think he's got a layup with bringing in like a second or third flavor or something, where in reality we're maybe just hanging on with the first one. So I think that is tough, and I think the only way we get around that is just by having those discussions with the buyers and being prepared coming in to know what the real thresholds are, and kind of comes back to your first slide and understanding their
no doubt. Any thoughts or any questions about either the syndicated solution for assortment or this iDig VIP solution with internal data? Anyone have any thoughts, comments, questions?
Tom, I have a question. How much of a factor is it during the time of year? I mean, aren't chains for the most part looking at changes in sets twice a year, maybe, right?
Twice a year, some once a year.
So getting out in front of that with this kind of data would be probably critical, right? I mean, how are recommendations being made by suppliers to chain accounts ahead of new resets? Do they get this in depth with their recommendations? Or
well, so it's a good question, and I think it's a good call out that if we're doing this just prior to the refresh schematics being built, I think you have a really good chance that story that you're trying to tell, it won't have been told with the frequency that it needs to. Meaning, this should be an ongoing dialogue. Hey, I know we're a few months out, but this is what I'm seeing. And the more we can tell that story when it's D-Day and they're getting ready to make the decision, we ought to have had a lot of exposure to them on what we're recommending. It probably resonates a lot greater and higher if you were to have an ongoing story versus the one time just prior might not hit the mark. It's a good point.
So one question related to when you choose to, if you have both syndicated and VIP data, the times where it's appropriate to use the VIP depletion data, which may not actually track sales. When is it a good idea to use this data? And maybe even just a follow-up, or maybe even answering my own question, but when you have a new item where you don't necessarily have a great sales track record in syndicated data, I guess when you would consider the two.
Well, I would say, as a rule, if you have syndicated data, you always want to use that over internal, just because it's category and the buyer will respond to syndicated data, I think, at a much higher, much greater level. And I think the reason why that is, because if you look at this example that you're looking at here, if I can even if I go back one slide here, if we look at total boulevard, it's $184,000 opportunity. The reason why I'd want to use syndicated instead of internal, this probably won't happen, but it could, Matthew, that hey, the day before, this is great, Fox, thanks for coming in, and I'm sorry you have a gap of 180,000. That's a lot of money. But New Belgium just came in yesterday. They told me they have a 200,000 surplus with our stores. So while you're not getting yours, I'm getting mine. They could say that. So when possible, syndicated data is going to be more obviously category based, not portfolio based. So that's one. The question around what if I guess what you're saying, what if our velocity levels were not necessarily competitive or as competitive as we'd want them? What do we do? I think at that point, you might want to look at maybe a select competitor that might have a better rate of sale, and maybe they're doing something different and that there's a better shelf location. Maybe we're cold in one, warm in another. Maybe the price points are not competitive. There might be some reason why our sales rate is so low. And if we could compare it to a select, if the account velocity is not great and even the market velocity isn't great, maybe there would be a select competitor where the sales rate is competitive. And if there's some reason why that is, whether it's, again, it's cold, it's priced more competitively, maybe we got a better adjacency. There could be a lot of reasons why. Maybe they promote it, Matthew, and that could be a way to prime the pump. I'd be looking for things like that. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have a question on in a situation where a supplier has a limited number of SKUs that they're competing with, does that put them at a disadvantage or an advantage when they're going up to create solutions against a company that has, far more SKUs that they're carrying?
So your question is it, if we have a lot of SKUs, are we somewhat insulated because we could take our own space? Is that?
Well, no. It would be just the opposite. If you have a limited number of SKUs that you're coming to market with, which could also be affected by all of those other reasons that you just mentioned in terms of adjacency, et cetera, does it give a smaller supplier an advantage because they have more to go after in terms of SKUs that the account may be carrying? So even though they're new and they have maybe their base isn't, they don't have a lot to go by, they can actually say, hey, we're new. These are, brand new in the market. We're getting velocity here. We may not be showing it to you right now, but look at these SKUs that you're currently carrying that are doing their dogs, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as the velocity levels are competitive, if you only have a few, then you'd probably have a great story to tell. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. So relative to assortment, again, it's all about the two key measures: velocity, availability for what's going in, what's coming out, quantify, and tell this, like Jim said, tell the story on an ongoing basis. Don't just, you might be thinking, hey, they only make decisions once a year. Well, tell the story on an ongoing basis. On the promotional side, I think, again, it's a little bit more of a few moving parts. With assortment, we just wanted to understand velocity and availability. With promotional analysis, we really are looking at two numbers. What do we sell normally off the shelf, what we would call, baseline volume, frontline pricing, baseline volume, versus what do we sell when we're on promotion? So one of the ways you could do this when you're thinking about internal data, this is a wine example, but I think you get it. The idea is if we look at a 12-month rolling, window of volume. So for 19 crimes, you can see from April through September, we're averaging around $1,700 of sales, each month. But in the months of October, November, December, when we got display support, you can see we jack up to 2,700. There's $1,000 lift, each month. So if you think about the impact on like what happens when we get promoted, this will answer that question. And then you can start to plug in, hey, in this example here, the numbers are pretty modest, but a lot of the accounts you call on, if you have track records where, hey, we've been promoted, they've promoted Seagram's, they've promoted, Labatt Blue, wherever your core brands are, wherever your territory is, one of the ways you can look at it, again, especially for accounts where we don't have syndicated data, you got to look at what is that normal level of sales, what is the promoted level, and then what is that difference? That's going to be the lift that we generate. And if you have an account like, hey, they've never promoted the brand, you're going to have to then look at a key competitor. Hey, you've never promoted Seagram's, but these accounts have. And this is what happens when they did it. So if we look at your baseline business, we can apply that same lift. In this case here, that would be a 1,700 versus 2,700. That's over a 30% lift. It's probably, frankly, it's actually closer to like 55, 60% lift. So we could take that lift and then apply it. Hey, you're doing $10,000 a month. So now you're going to do 16,000. We can apply that percentage in the event that you have to use a competitive account. And again, you'd always want to do that in a chain A or chain B environment. That you'd never want to divulge the actual volume levels. Would be, really not ethical, frankly. So first of all, how do we try to sell in promotional solutions, Kevin? Does the team do it this way, or is there a different approach that the team might use if we have an account where we don't have syndicated data?
Well, I would say if you want to do a syndicated data one, we should call on Mrs. Two Gold Stars and have her talk through it, because she just gave a really good example in a presentation yesterday.
Nice.
So if she's there.
2 gold stars. Let's hear it.
Ah,
Yeah. Typically, God, I don't know. Like I don't have CVS Indiana, for example, in our syndicated data. So, this is definitely something I could use. I mean, typically what I'll do is I'll look at what competition is doing, or I'll take an average of like what CVS is doing in the Midwest to come up with something. So it gets very tricky, for sure.
Oh, I don't know how that happened. Sorry about that. Yeah, well, I tell you, I love that. And that's a great example of, obviously showing the numbers and getting influence. That's a great. But does anyone ever do it with internal stuff, Kevin?
I think for these they do, but it's really tough to be directional with that on trying to figure it out, because I think the main thing that we struggle with is you want to know why it's better than something else that's out there. So I think that's a tricky one for us, unless we can show, like if we have a sample of 25 stores where we know we had a display or a feature, we could show those 25 stores versus the ones that don't have the feature and say, hey, we sold 25 cases here, we sold 5 here. So this
20 cases
potential that you could get. Yeah.
Tom,
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, there's no rules, right? There are absolutely no rules. So we just got to be, thinking about like, what's the best way to prove that we could have impact? And I think to your point, Kevin, whenever you're using iDig, yeah, we don't know necessarily, hey, if we're taking down a Blue Moon display, we really don't know, because we don't have the syndicated data to prove it. But what you do know, and again, you're putting your best foot forward to say, hey, listen, I know if you're talking $2,700 a month in this 19 crimes example, the buyer is going to be able to look at that and go, yeah, that's pretty compelling. Or, and again, when you look at promotional analysis, again, the scores in our survey, not high. People are not doing a good job of quantifying this. They're basically showing the programs and all the support behind it. And that's great. But I think what the buyer really wants to know is, hey, is there going to be demand for this? Is there going to be a return on that promotional investment?
Tom, we used to do that all the time. We never purchased syndicated data at the distributor. Way back when the AB key account people, they would share it. They were getting it and they would share it with us, but we would take that information and use it in the market for those accounts. We had no syndicated data because we could say just that. Look, competitor A, B, and C, they're carrying this. We have data to prove that this is how well it's doing. And it could be compelling. For an independent account. So I think if you can do it with an independent account, you can do it for a small local chain or one that is not subscribing to syndicated data.
So Jim, you and I should not play cards together.
Why is that?
Because you'd lose a lot of money. If you everyone know Jim, like when Jim's like this and all of a sudden when he wants to talk, he goes like this. He'll lean back in his chair and he'll put his arm up and that's his tell. That's his tell sign.
Wait.
So when you get a good hand, Jim, you're going to go like this. I'm going to go, I'm out. I'm folding.
Here's what I do when I get a good hand. I look directly across and say, you're going down. All right. You're going down. Look. I actually show my cards then. Isn't that the way?
How's that working out for you?
Fantastic. Got a couple diamond bracelets to prove it.
Oh, I'm sure you do. All right. So now when we think about promotions, when we do use syndicated data, there's a couple slides in here that just kind of speaks to this idea of, again, the solutions for assortment. You think about the concept. What was the assortment concept? Trying to find items that sell fast without great availability. We're doing the same thing with promotions. Who sells, like what brands have a lot of demand that aren't being promoted, aren't being displayed, aren't being featured, versus items that are being featured maybe regularly, but aren't necessarily, except for, what was I going to say? I kind of lost my train of thought there. So faster than ones that are, obviously being displayed really, really often, but don't sell very quickly, don't have a lot of demand. So again, it's like, items that sell fast with no displays, items that sell really slow, but a lot of displays. That's the same concept, same exact concept. And for whatever it's worth, I think most of you know, when you're looking at what they call causal measures within syndicated data, these are all driven by human observation. The auditors are in these stores, and it's my understanding they're in about 10 or 15% of the stores where they are, they have like a route, and they keep those accounts extremely confidential. They don't want anyone knowing where those accounts are, so they don't influence that sample. If you knew where those accounts were and you put like large displays up there, it would really tweak the data. And so they do a great job of, of never divulging. And the stores they pick are always going to be a represented sample of that chain. So if that chain has 50% of their volume in, in the country, out in like rural areas, then 50% of the sample would be rural. If it's 10% urban, then 10% of the samples, and they project it up. And it's one of those things where I don't know if you have an opinion on this, Kevin, but some people are like, I don't know if I can trust some of the causal measures. It seems like they're not reliable. I don't have that feeling. I believe the numbers are very accurate. These scientists at Nielsen and IRI will claim that they're accurate to like 99%. There's some wiggle room, but it's for the most part very much accurate.
Yeah, we have some buyers who dispute that, but I mean, I think it's Rodney. I think you just had one, right? That they question whether IRI or Nielsen are more accurate, but at the end of the day, like it's still like a blueprint that you're giving them, right? So you're like, hey, like this shows where the numbers are. So even if you're off X amount, like you should still be able to relate this. And if you say your category is worth this, like you divide it by 10% or multiply it by 10 or whatever the number is. So it still gives you a good baseline to look at.
Yeah.
To share for sure. But yeah, you'd be surprised. There are a couple, really, really big chains that have a lot of different buying offices that do dispute that number a lot. And sometimes they get sideways on it, but usually they just kind of pick on us really quick and then move on to what your point is.
Yep. Good stuff. So the promotional measures that we look at, again, are similar in that we're looking for availability and basically velocity, same as we did with assortment. So in this case here, we're looking for weighted weeks. So weighted weeks, like how often did brands get featured or did get displayed? So they do this on again, we call it on a weighted week basis. So these auditors are in the stores every week, and every week they're going to compile and aggregate all of the observations. And so you're going to get a certain percentage of the volume that they would have observed that displays were up. So in the example here, if all of the auditors, let's say this is Kroger Detroit, if all of the auditors in this, division went out and they hit all the sample stores, came back and aggregated it up, they say 40% of the ACV had a display for week one. Well, 40% of week one would not be, a full week. It's only going to be 40% of a week, 0.4 weeks. And if you do the report based on, 13 weeks or 26 weeks, it's going to aggregate those, in this case here, it's a 5-week report. So in 5 weeks, we got 1.2 weighted weeks. You can see week 2, we had 50% CWD or ACV regarding the weighted weeks. We got 0.5 weeks. Week 3 we got 0.1. 4 we got none. 5 we got 20% or 0.2. You add them all up, it's going to equal 1.2 weighted weeks. So I share this with you because a lot of you, if you have access to IRI and or Nielsen, these measures are there. And there is no better, because if you ran a 13-week report and it wasn't by weighted weeks, and you just said, okay, what's our display ACV, in that 13 weeks? You might see it might be 90%, but 90% could have been for one of those 13 weeks. The other 12 weeks, you could have had very little display activity. So whenever you run a report for a certain time period, it's literally beyond 1 week, you can run a 1-week report. But if you're going to run a report that you really want to identify just how much activity did we get compared to our competitors, the weighted weeks is the only way to go. Because that way you can, hey, you had 1.2 weighted weeks, somebody else had 4 weighted weeks. What does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean a lot until you then compare the velocity. So here's what I'm talking about. So if you look here and said, okay, and this is a SKU ranking report that includes promotional measures. In this case here, let me throw my little spotlight in here. So again, weighted weeks here. This is a report that is a 26-week report. The beer category in total had 24 weighted weeks. So beer was basically on display almost always. Not a big surprise. But then when you start getting down into brands and SKUs, you can see there's varying levels of weighted weeks. Some had, the highest one was actually Dos Equis. The next highest one was Corona, and then the third highest one was Bud Light. But then the next measure is this velocity measure. And again, we used sales per point for assortment for the example here with regard to weighted weeks and the average dollars per million. It's another measure that you can capture from IRI or Nielsen, where you can generate, okay, how much out of this, and it's almost like, think of it like a fictitious $1 million. If $1 million of, in this case here, all volume was calculated, what contribution would each of these brands or SKUs generate as to this $1 million? Now for beer generated $152 out of the million. Now you look at all these different brands, they're obviously going to have some level of a subset to that. Now in this case here, you look at the Bud Light. Well, actually a better example might be to look at the Coors Light. Coors Light came in at 7 weeks. You're looking at 13 weeks for Dos Equis. That's 6 weeks more activity that Dos Equis was given. and you look at the velocity, well, in this $1 million that would be generated, 46 of that million would be coming from stores that had displays of Coors Light compared to this $6. So we're not forecasting revenue necessarily. We're just looking at the relationship. I look at the relationship of $46 of velocity per million versus 6. In my mind, that's roughly 7 to 8 times faster selling that Coors Light would be generating with their displays compared to what Dos Equis would generate. And yet they got 6 more weeks. Excuse me. Questions. So in this example here, just side by side, 5, it's easy to do the analysis when the SKUs are side by side, but this is an item that had 7 less weighted weeks of support and over 3 times greater sales if they were on display side by side. So again, let me make sure I'm clear here. If you saw a display of Coors Light 24 packs, I'm not saying that they're going to sell $18. It's just 18 per million. And I'm not saying Dos Equis would sell $6 off that display. It's 6 out of this $1 million. So the $1 million is this like global level that says, okay, and the numbers are always going to be modest, but what they tell you is the relationship of how one sells compared to the other. So in this case here, it outsells them nearly 3 times. This one here, 7.5 times. I mean, think of that. Our display will sell 7.5 times faster than what you're currently displaying. That's pretty significant. Anyone have any questions? How many of you, and again, I don't know how many people would be using dollars per million when you're doing your promotional analysis, but it's a way to do it. And I wanted to make sure people understood that that's a measure you could use. You could also use dollars per point. And in that example, you could actually take that dollars per point and then take the difference in weeks, and you could actually calculate the difference. That analysis is possible. Anyone have any questions? Anyone doing it? How is everybody else doing it? Or maybe we're not doing it, or maybe the way Tracy talked about.
Yes, I actually used third gold star for the day, but I actually use this in all of my presentations this fall, showing them a promotional analysis chart and showing how like our Labatt Blue Light or our Seagram's Escapes, when we are promoted, we do 3 times than what our competition does when promoted, and yet we're promoted less. So, I think that really, when you can show them, not just numbers on a screen, but that grid or that table, I think it really helps drive the message, loud and clear to the buyer.
Love it. Love the validation. Love it. Thank you, Tracy. 3rd gold star, Jim. Take a note. Yeah, doesn't get any better than that.
No, well, you should get 4. That would be better.
That would be better. That would be better.
Even better.
Yeah.
Listening, Kevin?
Anybody else have any thoughts or questions?
I mean, and like Tracy's doing a good job selling herself. Like Jim gave her a gold star because she told him to.
Yeah.
So,
Asking for the order. It's just asking for the order, Kevin.
Exactly.
called her shot. It was great.
You're not going to get the gold star by waiting around and waiting for Jim. Jim's not going to do anything without being prompt.
I like consistency, and if Tom's going to hand out
You
gold
just see
stars-
Jimmy just went like this.
No, I did not. I rocked back.
That's your tell. I can't wait to play Texas Hold'em with you.
If I could reach through the screen right now and strangle you, I would, but I can't. I'm not a violent person by nature, but you're really provoking me. I think Tracy deserved 5 stars, but I'm
Wow.
actually being, conservative about it.
Impressive.
Other than Kevin, who gets called on constantly, Tracy's the only person who is willing to put herself out there and at the risk of maybe ridicule from you, Tom, who likes to ridicule people publicly.
Yeah.
I speak from
Ridicule right
experience.
Yeah, she would. I'm not worried about Tracy. All right. So let me talk about just what this would kind of look like. So when we think about like how prominent are solutions when we think about building presentations. So obviously, the idea of the first slide being a title page, no big deal. Second slide, when we reconfirm what the account's KPIs are, we indicate what solutions we're going to be potentially executing. So in this example here, we have an assortment solution. Maybe we would be indicating a promotional solution. Again, job one, whenever we build a presentation, job one is always to reconfirm their KPIs. So in this case here, they've told us they want to increase category sales. That's their primary KPI. They want to grow the category. In addition, because I'm in the craft space, at least in this example, that we know that from previous conversations, the buyer is interested in increasing the development of the craft segment. And so that's another of the KPIs that we're attentive to as we outline our assortment solutions. So basically I would present this as a, hey, what we have for you today are some assortment solutions that are going to really help you not only build your overall category sales, which I know is important to you, but we're also going to improve crafts development, which in previous conversations you've mentioned were important. And then I would check in and go, is that make sense? Are those still, high on your radar? Question mark. We would want to do it that way. Next thing we would do is our agenda, and then we would get into the opportunity. We've talked about this already. So, hey, craft is outperforming the market. Craft is well developed. You did mention that you want to increase your craft development to 130, maybe even 135. You're currently at 129. If we're going to try to improve craft development, again, these are opportunity slides. Again, not the focus of today's meeting, but we got to set it up. And then if we're going to try to help craft, let's then break craft down and look at craft by style. Well, in this case, you can see the seasonal style is the only style that's significantly underdeveloped. It's $817,000 opportunity. So if we can improve the seasonal development and get that $817,000, we can help build overall category sales, which is important. We can also help build craft development. So how are we going to do it? Now we get into our solution. So you can see the big red star. So here's the brands we're going to be bringing in, potentially bringing in, 590,000 of revenue. So we're approaching pretty close to what that 817 was. We got to take some volume out. So the second half of our solution is what we're going to be taking and diminishing. This is only 68,000. So we're talking about 521 potential dollars, or closing 64% of that opportunity gap that we identified, tying them together. Okay. And then when we kind of recap, then we recap here where we reiterate what that solution is going to do in terms of the benefit to the customer. So just pointing out that, hey, we're talking about solutions today. I think 3 or 4 of the 8 slides dealt with the solution. But again, while I didn't put a big red star next to those slides that had the opportunity slides, clearly the opportunity slide sets the stage. Then the solution comes in, which speaks to the impact and how much of that gap can we actually close. So, and again, really the last thing we're going to talk about is, again, just reiterating that we're really, we're identifying a problem and then we're going to solve a problem, or we're going to identify an opportunity and we're going to solve that opportunity. Not the whole thing, perhaps, but a subset of that. So again, in the previous example, we were trying to solve 817,000. We brought in a little over 500, 62% of that gap we can close with this immediate solution. The example you've seen on the slide, we have $1 million opportunity, $400,000 assortment solution, closing 40% of the gap. So, again, this, we love these little micro trainings. And Kevin, I probably should have said something at the beginning. You would have known this because of the text you and I shared this morning, but we have gotten a lot of feedback from our clients that, these meetings that were scheduled for, in some cases, 2 or 3, and in other cases, even 4 hours, this second half of the year, we have edited these things down and trying to limit them to no longer than 1 hour and 15 to 1.5 hours, just because people are busy. They got a lot of stuff going on. We can get to the point. And so that's what we're doing. And we hope that works for you. We think that, if we do one of these once a month, your team, Kevin, has been great. And Matthew, it's great to see you here. Every month we have these opportunities. And, Matthew, in your case, if you want to go back and watch, the one for opportunity identification, that would be an archive, even the first one around empathy and understanding the customer at a high level. Those are available to you that you can watch at your convenience. And then, next month, we're going to get into really putting the whole presentations together, and we're going to edit that down. They're going to be an hour and 15 to an hour and a half. We're going to try to really limit these, keep them more of a micro nugget versus a longer 4-hour, which we could do, but I think we're all challenged with time management. So anyway, any comments or questions about today's topic?
I wanted to just reinforce a couple things. I think you guys did a great job with this and going through where it is, because no matter how many of these classes you go to, it's great just to get refreshed and reminded like what the point is. And it's that first thing that you have highlighted here where it's addressing the customer's situation. So I know we are very good at identifying an opportunity, but I think we still have opportunities as a team to identify the customer's opportunity and reinforce that first. So we definitely need to circle back on that and make sure that's part of what we're addressing. So if we're talking categories, starting there, just making them understand where this $1 million opportunity is. That I think Tom and Jim did an outstanding job with on laying that out. And then I guess the other feedback for my team for sure, Matthew, I don't know, you definitely don't have to listen to me, but I would say it's looking at these solutions and you go through the slides. One thing that some people do really well is they make sure they highlight the information that's relevant. So if you are showing a total category opportunity and where things are indexing, like if you're trying to move the story to FMB or to craft, make sure that those 2 items are highlighted, everything else is grayed out or like kind of de-emphasized, because if something's on a page, somebody's going to have a chance to look at it and they might have an opinion. And in a lot of your cases, you're going to have 30 minutes to go through what you need to go through. So if you want to keep them on point, it's really important, like just the small formatting things that you're doing with all the work. Like if you have the numbers, don't move them over to premium or don't move them over to seltzer. Like if you don't want them to go there, like make sure the point that you want to have is highlighted. So, even on this slide, I don't even know if I'm going to read the part that Tom doesn't have highlighted here because he's got the other 3 things highlighted. So I know that those are the most important ones and that we should focus on those. So that would be my feedback. So remember, what is the solution for the customer? And then go to ours, because I think we do go to ours first and then come back to them. But let's make sure we're starting with their opportunity.
That's back. What I'm talking about, gold star, Kaleka. That's what I'm talking about right there.
You didn't even ask for it. I just got one too.
Yeah, you don't have to ask. Jim would not have done it, but I know excellence when I hear it, Jim. And that a lot of that may have been a little bit over your head, but it was really good stuff.
You're playing favorites.
I'm fine with that. That's fine.
Anyway, we look forward to hearing success stories. We look forward to hearing challenges. Stay in touch. Let us know what we can do. Jim, any final thoughts from you, my man?
No, I just don't really appreciate the fact that you gave away my tell to all these people, because in the future, if I ever am in a card game with them, then
Jim looks at his cards.
No, Tom, again, I think it's great. I think, okay, truth be told, when you were asking me to read the slide and that quote, I was trying to get Kevin's picture up on my screen and it was lost. But no, I really do think that shortening these webinars to an hour and a half, hour, 15 minutes is going to prove to have dividends for everybody. Because even if they're going to watch them on archive later, it's a lot easier to get through an hour and 15 minutes. And hell, Tom, if we were to cut out the jokes, the clowning around, then it could probably be
15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. How boring would that be?
No.
Can't do it.
You got to do it. Too important. Anyway, thanks everybody for attending. We're going to be doing a program tomorrow for sales process. So anyone would be open to attending that one too. That goes at 10. That's probably going to end similarly, 11:15, 11:30 is what we're targeting. So look forward to staying in touch. Great job. And you all enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.
And go blue.
And go blue. H, yes. Sorry. OH.
All right, everyone. Thank you for attending.
right.
Appreciate it.
We will see y'all later. Thanks a lot.